Hello and welcome once again to On the Go with Glenn Advantage Team. I'm your host, Marcia Glenn, and today I have the pleasure to introduce you to both a very interesting guest and the important and timely organization he works for. Our guest is Richard Link. So, Richard, thank you so much for joining us today. This is a really important topic that I think needs to be discussed at length and brought to the forefront. An immigration attorney at JustCause, Richard has a JD from the University of California, Davis School of Law, and has a background in language studies and computer graphic design. Interesting. Richard, tell us a little bit more about yourself in general, please.
Yeah, I'm originally from California, and I first moved to Rochester in 1991. It was my first job out of law school. I came to work for the Old Lawyers Cooperative Publishing Company in downtown. And I've moved away a couple times and moved back a couple times, and now I'm here permanently. I've bought a house in Cornhill, an old 1855 Greek revival that I restored back from apartments to a single family home.
That's great. Real estate, I'm very interested in that
Yeah.
part of. I love Cornhill and all the history and everything else that goes on around that particular area of our city. So thank you for coming back and being with us here in Rochester, the great city of Rochester. So as I said earlier, Richard is a staff attorney at Just Cause. Richard, can you tell us about the origins of the organization and why it is so important now?
Yes, Just Cause used to be known as the Volunteer Lawyers Project of Monroe County, and they changed their name about 7, 8 years ago. So, what we do is serve the low income community of Rochester and the surrounding counties. So, people that cannot afford lawyers can come to us, and we will find them a lawyer to work on their case rather than having them going out into the community searching all around trying to find themselves a free lawyer. So we work in several different areas. Immigration is one of them. We do family law, like divorces and custody. We do estate planning, wills and trusts. We do we have a housing unit that does tenant defense, things like that.
Sweet. So when you ended up starting in the position that you have right now, was there a thought process that things would be veering into such a strong position of what's happening in our city and across the country right now? Was that anything that you had any kind of foresight on coming into that?
Yeah, I think all immigration lawyers knew something like this was possible just because of the political climate in recent years and, of course, the first Trump presidency. But nobody could really predict of the real intensity of the enforcement effort and of kind of the craziness that's been going on around immigration right now.
I don't think it could have been thought of at the extent of what we are experiencing at this point. So on January 30th, 2026, Governor Hochul introduced the Local Cops, Local Crimes Act to stop immigration and customs enforcement from co-opting local law enforcement. It does not prevent, though, local or state law enforcement from continuing to work with federal law enforcement in criminal investigations. Bill Fitzpatrick, an Onondaga County's nationally known Republican district attorney, agreed with the move, actually, saying the Trump's administration current immigration enforcement policies defy rationality and common sense. The Monroe County Sheriff's Office does not ask about immigration status when people report crimes or seek assistance so that both victims and witnesses can feel safe when they interact with law enforcement. Do I have that
That's correct.
pretty concise and correct? Well, all these are very positive steps for immigrants. It does not mean that the road to citizenship is less complicated. So, starting with the basics, can you walk us through the three kinds of documentation? Because I don't know that everyone is completely aware in terms of what those three kinds are and what they mean directly to the person involved in that particular position.
Yeah, there are actually several different types of immigration status in the United States, more than just the three. The most secure one, obviously, is a U.S. citizen. U.S. citizens cannot be deported unless their citizenship is taken away. There are lawful permanent residents. That's what we refer to as people having a green card. Those people are allowed to live in the United States for as long as they want and work for any employer they want. There are people here temporarily, usually coming on some kind of visa that allows them to stay for a particular amount of time or do a particular job. There are also people that have been given asylee or refugee status in the United States. They can live and work here as long as they want, but they're encouraged to apply for a green card after a year of being in that refugee status. And then there are other kind of quasi legal statuses for people that have a pending application for something else, or maybe they have an order of deportation and they can't be sent back to the country they've been ordered deported to.
So, in all those three categories, and even the U.S. citizen portion of it, all those three categories, why do the folks who are on the street living within any of these categories, why do they feel so afraid and possibly threatened at this point in time? Maybe less so in our community, though it is happening. It's certainly being exacerbated across the country. So,
Yeah, well, immigration's very complicated and people don't really understand what's possible, what ICE can do and what ICE can't do, and what their status entitles them to, or if it puts them in danger. So people just don't know. So that creates a lot of fear when you hear that there's a giant operation of trying to deport people and a big police presence and ICE police presence in the community.
so that certainly would tend to create a little bit of apprehension, I would imagine, with our citizens here.
Yeah.
So, if I'm trying to apply for a green card, take me through this process. What would I need? Why would I need an immigration lawyer?
Okay, so immigration law is surprisingly complex. It's actually one of the reasons I like it as a lawyer because it's intellectually challenging, 'cause it's very complex. So these application processes and forms are pretty complicated. Think about a tax return form, trying to do that yourself. It may even be more complicated than that. So people can do it themselves, but often, if you make a mistake, which is easy to do, it could delay your process or maybe even have the government deny your green card, and then you're opening yourself up to deportation because of that. I see a lot of clients coming to me that have tried to do it on their own and run into big trouble.
So certainly the suggestion would be is make sure that you align yourself with someone who can give you the proper guidance, give you the proper information, and certainly direct you in the correct arenas in order to make sure that you're taken care of correctly.
That's true. Of immigration lawyers, hiring a private immigration lawyer, of course, is going to cost money, but people who are basically low income can come to JustCause and we'll find them a lawyer for free.
Oh, that's really good information for people to have out there for sure. They have a place to be able to make a phone call to, even if they feel as though they would never be able to afford it. Why bother?
Yeah.
That's great news to put out. So what legal recommendations should you make if you were walking down the street, minding your own business, and you were stopped by an immigration official?
Okay, so there are two agencies that enforce immigration law. One is ICE, and the other is Customs and Border Protection, or CBP, sometimes called Border Patrol. They're usually at airports and at the border, but their jurisdiction extends 100 miles in from the border. So they can stop anybody at any time to ask about immigration status. And ICE can too. They're supposed to have a reasonable suspicion that you have no immigration status. So if you're stopped, the most convenient thing for you to do is have some kind of proof of your immigration status on you. Uh, because if they stop you, it's possible they may detain you for a longer period of time until they can determine what your immigration status is. And that just becomes a big hassle for you, right? Uh, And that's for people that actually have immigration status and can prove it. So if you have a green card, you're required to carry that on you at all times. You should just be able to show that to an officer and be on your way. If you have no status and you're stopped, then you are in trouble. You, of course, have the right to remain silent. You don't have to incriminate yourself or do ICE's job for them, but they will most likely hold you until they can determine what your status is.
So, do you find that here in Rochester, we have folks being stopped on the street that are, for example, a US citizen, but doesn't have the documentation that they are being asked for being detained?
I'm not sure how common that is in Rochester. That may be more common in cities where there's a big ICE operation, like we've seen in Minneapolis. What's more common is that people get are collateral damage, right? They happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. They may be with somebody who ICE may be looking for. Um, they may be caught up in a workplace raid. Um, so that is more likely what's happening.
So, if someone were in our area as an immigrant going through some process, what would be the recommendation for them to do if someone were to show up at their door?
Uh, yes, it depends on where they are. So, of course, if you're inside your own home, you're protected by the Fourth Amendment, where the ICE, for example, would have to have a judicially signed warrant to enter your home or search your home. So the recommendation is do not allow anybody inside your home. Uh, ICE will try to deceive you or say, "Oh, we're looking for somebody else. We just need a second of your time. Just let us in." You do not have to let them in and should not let them in. They usually will not have a judicially signed warrant. They don't go through that trouble. They'll just wait outside the location where they think somebody is. There are also other places that you would have a reasonable expectation of privacy protected by the Fourth Amendment. For example, any kind of private space, even if it's designated private by a business or a church or maybe a hospital room or a school. Just anywhere that it's not open to the public. You're pretty safe there against search and seizure. If you're in a public area, then you are, ICE can come and detain you.
So, tell us what the baseline difference is between what would be called an administrative warrant and a judicial warrant.
Sure. The administrative warrant, it's unfortunate that he used the word warrant because it confuses you with an actual judicial warrant. An administrative warrant is just some higher level official at ICE saying, go get this person. So they sign a paper basically telling their officers that this is the person of interest. This is the person you should go out and pick up. That's what we call an administrative warrant.
So, judicial is really what they should have if they're standing outside your door and expecting you to end up letting them in and they're coming out. Is that correct?
Exactly. So if they hand you a piece of paper, make sure it's from a court and that a judge has signed it.
So, that can be asked for by the person inside on the opposite side of the door that they're asking to open that door. They can ask for that specifically. I need to see a judicial warrant. I want to know that it's signed by a judge.
Yeah. Hopefully, they are able to slip it underneath the door so you don't have to actually open the
Open.
door. You
Correct.
don't want to do anything that could be construed as giving ICE consent to enter your home.
Okay. Good advice. So, what kind of legal recommendations would you make for those folks who are involved in peaceful protests at this point? Against the kind of outrageous behavior that has taken place in the current administration, exasperated across the country for sure, but we in Rochester are within that 100-mile border zone. So I think that it is something to be aware of in our city, in our area, as a definite that it may end up, arriving even stronger at our doorstep.
That's true. I think a lot of people rightfully get upset at what ICE is doing and even their mere presence. So that's why you see a lot of protests. And often this happens as they are trying to apprehend somebody. Uh, we've seen that here in Rochester. That's been happening. What you don't want to do is interfere with the operation physically or really get too close to ICE officers. That's really just sticking your finger in the fan. I don't think you're. I mean, these are heavily armed people, with military gear, and they are trained to really push back against any kind of protest. So keep a distance, but the most important thing you can do is film what they are doing with your camera or video it. Because as you've seen, they will try to spin a story about what protesters are doing or what they're doing that may be totally at odds with what actually happened. And if you have that video proof, as we saw in Minneapolis, that's the best thing.
So legally, we can certainly end up protesters can expect to be able to film, and that is a legal right,
Yeah,
correct?
that's true. Yeah.
And if they are with, let's say, in a buddy system at the protest together, making sure that someone else with them also knows that it's their legal right to be able to end up doing some kind of a video if that becomes necessary.
Yes. Yeah.
So in terms of taking their phones, let's say there was some kind of a scuffle that took place, can they take your phone from you and then be able to gather all the data off of it?
Uh, the legality of that is questionable. The practicality of them doing that is a different matter, right? They will take your phone if they want to and search through it. And then you'll just have to litigate the legality of that later. So definitely never hand your phone to an ICE officer. Um, and we recommend, I mentioned earlier, keeping proof of your immigration status on you. We don't recommend having that on your phone and then handing your phone to try to show them the proof to an ICE officer, because who knows what they'll do with your phone. It may be better if you can to carry an actual card or paper on you.
Okay. So have you heard in our area? I know that there are indeed detention centers that are being paid for and cropping up across the country to hold thousands upon thousands of immigrants that are indeed detained. In our area, New York State, have we had any kind of word on new detention centers popping up besides, say, the one in Batavia?
Yes, I have not heard of any plans to construct any in New York State or this area. I've gone before the Monroe County Legislature and urged them not to approve the construction of any new facilities. The government likes to build them down south in jurisdictions that are more friendly to them politically. Um, so that tends to be where they exist now and where they're planning on building them.
Okay, well, that's at least positive in that respect for our area. So how can we end up helping as U.S. citizens help in terms of our immigrant neighbors and our friends and in our communities? Do we do monetary donations? Would that end up helping most? Donating clothing and food, helping to escort children to school, which I know has kind of become a little bit of a hot button. And are the protests helping? Do you see them as helping?
Yes, well, protests are always useful to give voice to your opinion, and hopefully your government officials are seeing the protests, listening to you. So a protest is always going to help. What you can do to help immigrants. First, we should talk about the laws about helping immigrants. There are federal laws that prevent you from harboring somebody here with no status, meaning like if you know somebody has no legal status and then you shelter them in your home, that could be considered a violation of federal law. So you want to be careful about even asking people about their immigration status, because you want to be able to plausibly deny that you knew somebody was here illegally. You could just say, "Oh, I just thought they were an immigrant, right? I just wanted to help an immigrant." Um, with monetary donations, of giving them rides, of often they may not have a driver's license, or they may think it's too dangerous for them to go out into public to shop. So if you're a part of a church or an organization that can set up a program like that where people can come and ask for that kind of assistance, that's great. Monetary assistance, of course, is great to any organization that's helping immigrants and refugees, of which there are several in the Rochester area.
Okay. So there's two bills currently in Albany, both of which will help immigrants, one of which is stuck in committee, and the other of which has just arrived. First is the Access to Representation Act, or the ARA bill, establishes the right to legal counsel in immigration court proceedings. It is currently stuck in committee. Second, the State Senate bill, the BUILD Act, Building Up Immigrant Legal Defense Act, aims to enhance legal representation for immigrants facing deportation in New York by providing grants to strengthen legal services, infrastructure, and workforce capacity. Do you have any thoughts on any movement either of these might have in the near future?
Yes, this is a subject that's been around for a number of years, and hopefully this new effort will be successful. Um, the reason why it's important is that your chances of successfully fighting deportation are way greater if you're represented by a lawyer. Often, people who are in deportation proceedings do not speak English, do not understand the American legal system, much less the immigration system. They don't know what's happening to them. They may be presented with papers saying, "Can you please sign your own deportation order?" essentially, and that's what's happening to them. So if
And they
they,
don't even understand that they're signing it.
yeah, that's a possibility. So, having a lawyer would be great, but there are so many people in immigration court that need lawyers, that there's a cost associated with providing a free lawyer to everybody. So that may be the sticking point in passing this bill is the cost of it. But consider that if you're charged with a crime and you're in a criminal court, you have the right to counsel, and we provide public defenders. I would argue that immigration court proceedings where your ability to stay in the country is at stake is just about as important as being sent to jail. So it may be time to assure everybody in deportation proceedings that they have a lawyer.
So best advice is to end up having our immigrant neighbors and friends and family make sure that they are indeed seeking out some kind of counsel so to get the correct advice, even with these bills in motion.
That's true. The problem is in the Rochester area, at least, there's not a lot of immigration lawyers and even fewer that work in the deportation defense area. So a lot of time they'll be coming to us or the Legal Aid Society or Journey's End Refugee Services, trying to find low cost or free representation. And even if they can afford to pay for a lawyer, it's going to be difficult for them to find a lawyer in Rochester to do it. There may be more in Buffalo, but then it's harder for them to communicate with lawyers in Buffalo.
So that's an interesting kind of factor to throw out there. How many attorneys do you think we actually have in our area that can do representation for our population that would need?
I would say there's less than a dozen in Rochester, and a lot of them work for the Legal Aid Society or for nonprofits. So private removal defense lawyers in Rochester, only a handful. And that's because the court is actually in Buffalo, so there's more practitioners in Buffalo. The people who are being detained awaiting their removal hearing are in Batavia. So there is a nonprofit that works in the Batavia courts trying to get people representation. But of course, they're all overwhelmed. There's just too many people that need the help and not enough lawyers.
So we have a call out for more attorneys to end up joining into this particular fight.
Yes, that's what Just Cause really exists for. We're trying to expand the pool of lawyers that are available to help immigrants. So we have 2 staff attorneys that work in the immigration unit at Just Cause, but our job is really to train and mentor lawyers in the Rochester community who may not be immigration lawyers. So we'll train and assist them if they want to take on immigration cases.
Wow. That's truly important, and thank you so much for kind of putting that out there and making sure that that is happening in some way in order to increase the numbers. So, is there anything that we have spoken about that needs to be expanded upon a little bit more, or a little bit more information given from your point of view? What do we not know?
I think it's important, first of all, to realize that immigration law and immigration law enforcement is a federal area of law. And that's why we see these bills in New York State that are trying to curtail the state's involvement with this federal operation. There's no requirement that the states cooperate with the federal government in this. They can't interfere with it, obviously. They don't have that power. But we're trying to stop cooperation of local police departments. For example, say they pull somebody over for a traffic stop. You don't want them calling ICE and saying, hey, I think this person might be here illegally. That's not supposed to be happening. It is possible for a state or local law enforcement agency to sign a cooperation agreement with the federal government. These are referred to as 287G agreements. They're not very prevalent in New York State. There's not many of them, and I believe there's an effort statewide to make sure that no law enforcement agency in New York signs one of these agreements.
That would be a good thing.
Yeah.
So, Rochester being itself a sanctuary city, already been designated as a sanctuary city, do you see that cooperation between police for our local police force? What's happening between our local police force and the actual ICE and or CBP operations?
Yes. Well, the official policy is for them, if you're picked up by local police, they're not supposed to be inquiring into immigration status. And my guess is that they're not doing that. And they really, they're under no obligation to turn people over to ICE. Now, does it happen informally? Could it possibly happen? An officer going rogue? We often suspect that does happen. I have no proof of it, but it's certainly a possibility.
So there's unknowns that are kind of laying out there.
Yeah.
That could stand to be answered in some way, shape, or form. So, coming to the end of our time together, thank you. Your reaction, I would love, to a phrase made popular by journalist Adam Serwer. I hope I'm saying that correctly. The cruelty is the point. And that we've heard more than once from different people.
Yes. It's possible that the cruelty is the point. I think you have to understand why this is happening today. It's certainly not without historical precedent that anti-immigrant sentiment and laws have cropped up in the United States, obviously in other countries. So it's not a new thing. It seems to come and go. So we have to ask, why is this happening now? Why is anti-immigrant sentiment more acceptable to people? And it could be of, insecurity about people's economic situation, and they blame immigrants for that. Misinformation, thinking that immigrants are getting benefits or benefits from the government that other people aren't getting, which is not true. Or you hear the Trump administration pushing the line of immigrants are bringing crime to the country and drugs to the country. That is not true. Uh, but I think for some reason, people find that easy to believe and really want to scapegoat immigrants. So if that is if that's your mindset and you want to solve that imaginary problem by creating a police force and rounding up millions of people to try to deport them, to try to make things better somehow, of why not be as cruel as you want, right? And I think that's what we're seeing. So maybe cruelty is the point.
That's sad
Yeah.
in that respect. But I also think that if folks are gathering information from whatever vehicle that they gather their information from, it is indeed our responsibility as we're reading that information to actually fact check it so that we know that what we're receiving is indeed correct, verifiable, and it's not all based simply on stoking that fear, bringing up that emotional level without having any kind of concrete basis and baseline fact behind it.
Yes, it's true. I think for people that live in more urbanized areas that live around a lot of immigrants and know them and are exposed to it, those xenophobic and racist kind of arguments are just don't work because you have direct experience and knowledge for yourself. But perhaps if you're living in a more rural area, a red state where you're not around a lot of immigrants, I think the xenophobic arguments can really take hold. It's easier for them to take hold.
Always that fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
So, our recommendation would be to make sure that you make it known and get those facts that end up driving your actual baseline reasons in terms of how you're reacting.
It's true. Yeah.
So, anything that I have left out, anything you'd like to put on the table? It's a dynamic conversation and one which really needs to be spoken to, I think, right now.
Yes, well, immigration law is such a vast array of laws and policies. We could really go for hours talking about immigration law. I think it's important to realize that the president really does have a lot of power over immigration law to shape policy. Immigration laws in Congress have been hard to come by because there's such a stalemate. So really a lot of immigration law has been driven by presidential directives. For example, the president has the ability to keep people out of the country, which we've seen him do recently. In his first administration, it was called the Muslim ban. Right now, there's a ban on issuance of visas to many more countries. You cannot get a permanent resident visa if you're a citizen of about 75 different countries right now. And then he's also directed United States Citizenship and Immigration Services to put a pause on adjudication of any kind of green card, citizenship, work permit, any kind of immigration benefit for people from about 40 countries. So he really has the ability to grind immigration to a halt, both keeping people out and deporting people. So we're seeing a full-scale effort with that right now.
Which ultimately limits people coming in with job skills that most definitely would be beneficial for our country.
Yeah.
I'm not mistaken. And it's also decreasing the number of students, the percentages of students coming in and actually enrolling from other countries into our country have definitely decreased, which is kind of taking away a direct force of folks that are going to be nothing but beneficial in the end to our growth here in this country.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not really sure the immigration policy of the current administration is really grounded in any kind of economic reality. I think it's more of an agenda of keeping America white, or of the way it used to look in the 1950s. It's really, I mean, you almost want to call it a racist agenda when you look at things like completely cutting off all refugees except for white South Africaners. So, I mean, draw your own conclusions, but I don't see a lot of effort to keep white Europeans out of the country, and it's also an effort to keep poorer people out of the country. F You may have heard of something called the gold card.
Mm-hmm.
So what this is saying that if you are able to pay the government $1 million or $2 million on behalf of somebody, um, that you can that automatically means that you are a person of exceptional business ability. So is that legal? Probably not. But if you're going to do that, just sell off all those green cards that are meant for people of extraordinary ability. Then what happens to the people with extraordinary ability? There's a cap on those visas. So if you're selling them off, the other people are waiting in line and maybe never getting in, the people that Congress wanted in.
Right. So finding out those facts is a truly important, it's on our shoulders. We, as the public, should definitely research and find out the facts and definitely know what is driving things rather than just speaking to it and not knowing what's behind it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, I'd like to thank you, Richard Link, for joining us today. We would also like to thank the Just Cause for the important work that they do. If you would like to donate or volunteer to the organization, please see the show notes for more information on that. And if you'd like to contact Richard or Just Cause, all of that information is in our show notes as well. I want to thank you for joining us today. This is On the Go with the Glenn Advantage Team. I am your host once again, Marcia Glenn, and I hope that you always let the Glenn Advantage Team be your advantage in the marketplace. Search for On the Go with the Glenn Advantage Team wherever you get your podcasts. Follow, like, and subscribe to the series, please. And Richard, thank you so much for this wealth of information that needed to be put on the table today.
Yeah, pleasure to be
I
here.
appreciate that.